Jake Morrison stood at the large window of his office, watching the morning sun rise over the golden wheat fields of New Dakota. The planet had been humanity's most successful farming colony for 20 years. Children played in the streets below, while their parents prepared for another day of peaceful work. Nobody expected this Tuesday morning to be their last. The communication alert made Jake turn from the window. His assistant, Mary Collins, looked worried as she handed him the datapad. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from space. It's not one of our ships." Jake took the pad and frowned. The signal came from beyond the outer planets where no human vessels should be. "Put it through to the main screen." The office wall lit up with an image that made Jake's blood run cold. Strange creatures with gray skin and 4 arms stared back at him. Their eyes were completely black and sharp teeth filled their mouths. Behind them, Jake could see the bridge of what looked like a massive warship. "I am Commander Vex of the Zeltharian hegemony." The alien spoke in perfect English. "You humans have built your nest on our sacred ground. You have 48 hours to leave this world. All of you." Jake stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "Commander Vex, I'm Jake Morrison, administrator of New Dakota Colony. We've been here for 20 years. Our records show this system was empty when we arrived. Perhaps we can discuss this and find a solution that works for both our peoples." The alien commander made a sound like laughter, but there was no humor in it. "Discuss? With vermin, you soil our ancestors' resting place with your presence. We do not negotiate with insect." "Please," Jake said. "We have over 2 million people here. Families, children, elderly citizens who cannot travel. Give us time to arrange proper transportation. We can share the planet. There's room for everyone." Commander Vex's black eyes narrowed. 48 hours. Leave or be removed." The screen went dark. Jake stood in silence for a moment, then grabbed his communicator. "Get me Colonel Lisa Parker immediately." Within minutes, Colonel Parker arrived at Jake's office. She was a tough woman in her 40s who had served in Earth's military before coming to New Dakota. Her face was grim as Jake explained the situation. "How many ships do we have?" Jake asked. 12 cargo haulers that we've mounted some basic weapons on," Lisa replied. "They're meant for pirates, not military warships. Sir, if these aliens have real warships, we can't fight them." Jake walked back to the window. In the distance, he could see the elementary school where his own daughter attended classes. "How many people can our ships evacuate?" "Maybe 50,000 if we pack them tight." "But Jake, that leaves over 2 million people with no way off the planet. Start evacuating immediately. Priority to children and elderly. Send a message to Earth requesting immediate military assistance." Jake paused. "And Lisa, prepare for the worst." Colonel Parker nodded and left quickly. Jake spent the next 2 days coordinating the evacuation while trying to reach Commander Vex again. The alien refused all communication. On the morning of the 3rd day, Jake stood in the colony's communication center with engineer Matt Sullivan. Most of the children had been evacuated, but there was no time for everyone else. Through the window, they could see dark shapes in the sky growing larger. "Sir," Matt said, pointing at his instruments. "I'm reading massive energy signatures. Those ships are huge." Jake activated the colony-wide emergency system. His voice echoed through every building on New Dakota. "This is Administrator Morrison. Alien warships are approaching. Everyone must reach the evacuation centers immediately. This is not a drill. Move now." The first energy beam struck the northern city of Riverside. The entire city simply vanished in a flash of white light, leaving only a smoking crater 5 miles wide. Jake stared in horror as 2 million people realized they were going to die. Colonel Parker's voice crackled over the radio. "Jake, get out of there! We can't save everyone, but we can save some." More beams fell from the sky. The capital city disappeared. The industrial sector became a lake of melted metal. Jake could hear screaming through his communicator as evacuation ships desperately tried to save whoever they could. Matt grabbed Jake's arm. "Sir, we have to go." "The communication center is a target." "No," Jake said firmly. "I need to send a message to Earth. They need to know what happened here." Matt's hands flew over the controls, boosting the transmission power. Jake looked directly into the camera, knowing this would probably be his last message to humanity. "This is Administrator Jake Morrison of New Dakota Colony. We are under attack by the Zeltharian hegemony. They gave us 48 hours to evacuate over 2 million people. We tried to negotiate. They refused. They're killing everyone. No mercy, no prisoners. They're burning our cities and shooting fleeing civilians." Another energy beam struck nearby, shaking the building. Through the window, Jake could see alien soldiers landing and firing at anything that moved. They shot children running for shelter. They killed medical workers trying to help the wounded. The aliens consider us insects, Jake continued. They say we don't deserve to live. They're not just taking our planet. They're murdering every human being they can find. Remember us. Remember what they did here. Tell Earth what happened to New Dakota. Matt looked up from his controls. Sir, they're jamming us. This might be the last transmission that gets through. Jake nodded. This is Jake Morrison signing off. Tell our families we love them. Tell Earth to make these monsters pay. The communication array exploded in a shower of sparks. Through the broken windows, Jake could see Zeltharian soldiers approaching the building. He and Matt stood together, refusing to run. Commander Vex's voice boomed across the colony's speakers, which somehow still worked. Let this be a lesson to all humans. Your species is a disease that spreads across the galaxy. We are the cure. Other human worlds will follow. We will cleanse the universe of your kind. The last thing Jake Morrison saw was an alien soldier raising its weapon. The last thing he heard was Matt Sullivan saying, "At least Earth will know the truth." When the shooting stopped, New Dakota was silent. No human voices. No laughter. No crying babies. Just smoke rising from the ruins of what had been humanity's most peaceful world. The Zeltharians planted a flag in the center of the crater that had been the capital city. They declared New Dakota purified and sent a message to nearby human colonies. Abandon your worlds or join the insects of New Dakota in death. But they made one mistake. They let Jake Morrison's final message reach Earth, and Earth was listening. President Marcus Cole sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the White House. The room had no windows, just cold metal walls and bright lights that made everyone look pale. Around the table sat the most powerful people on Earth, but today they all felt helpless. The large screen on the wall showed the last images from New Dakota. Burning cities. Dead children in the streets. Alien soldiers shooting civilians who tried to surrender. Nobody in the room spoke. They had been watching the footage for an hour, and there was nothing left to say about the horror. General Patricia Ross broke the silence. She was a hard woman who had fought in 3 wars, but her voice shook as she spoke. Mr. President, we need to decide how to respond. The Joint Chiefs have prepared 3 options. Cole looked at her with tired eyes. He had aged 10 years in the past week since New Dakota went silent. Let's hear them. Option 1, General Ross began. Economic sanctions. We cut all trade with species that support the Zeltharians. We pressure our allies to do the same. Option 2, limited military response. We target their military ships and bases. Show them we can fight back without escalating to full war. Option 3. Ross paused and looked around the room. Total warfare. Complete destruction of the Zeltharian species. Secretary of State Helen Carter shifted in her chair. Marcus, we need to think about this carefully. If we overreact, other alien species might see us as the aggressors. We could end up fighting the entire galaxy. Cole turned to look at the screen again. A Zeltharian soldier was executing a group of human children who had been hiding in a school. The children were no older than his own grandchildren. Helen, Cole said quietly, what would you call shooting children who are trying to surrender? It's terrible, but we need to consider the bigger picture. Maybe we can negotiate. Maybe they'll listen to reason if we show strength without destroying them completely. Dr. Alex Chen, Earth's chief scientist for alien affairs, spoke up. Mr. President, I've been studying everything we know about Zeltharian culture. They don't negotiate with species they consider inferior. To them, we're not people. We're bugs. You don't negotiate with bugs. You step on them. Cole nodded for Chen to continue. The Zeltharians have a simple view of the universe. Strong species deserve to live. Weak species deserve to die. They see mercy as weakness. Diplomacy as weakness. Everything we consider civilized behavior, they see as proof that we should be exterminated. Admiral Ryan Torres, head of Earth's space fleet, leaned forward. Sir, we've been analyzing their ships and tactics. They're good, but they're not unbeatable. They have advantages in firepower, but we have advantages in speed and adaptability. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Torres placed a data pad on the table. Operation Cleansing Fire. We study them, learn their weaknesses, and then we hit them with everything we have. Not their military. Not their government, everything, their entire species. The room went quiet again. Cole picked up the data pad and read through the plan. It was detailed, thorough, and absolutely ruthless. This is genocide, Helen Carter whispered. Yes, Cole replied. It is, just like what they did to New Dakota was genocide. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. Mr. President, I've been studying Zeltharian biology. They evolved on a world with a binary star system. Their physiology is adapted to high radiation and low gravity. Their ships use organic neural networks based on their own brain tissue. What does that mean for us? It means they have specific weaknesses we can exploit. Their reproduction cycle requires very particular atmospheric conditions. They can only breed on their homeworld and 3 colony planets. If we destroy those worlds, their species dies out in 1 generation. General Ross nodded. We've also discovered that their neural network ships can be infected with biological weapons designed for their specific brain chemistry. We could turn their own ships against them. Cole looked around the room. These were good people, moral people who had spent their lives trying to make the world better. Now they were calmly discussing the complete destruction of an alien species. What about our allies? Cole asked. The Centauri Republic, the trade federations? Admiral Torres answered. Some will support us once they see the footage from New Dakota. Others will condemn us. But sir, the Zeltharians made it clear this isn't about territory or resources. They want to exterminate humanity, every human man, woman, and child. They see us as a plague to be cured. If we don't stop them now, General Ross added, they'll move on to our other colonies. Earth itself could be next. Cole stood up and walked to the screen. The footage had moved to the final moments of New Dakota's communication center. Jake Morrison looked directly into the camera, begging Earth to remember what happened. They killed children playing in schools, Cole said quietly. They executed medical workers treating the wounded. They laughed while they did it. He turned back to the room. This isn't war. This is extermination. They've chosen to teach us that mercy is weakness. Cole sat back down and looked at each person in the room. I'm authorizing Operation Cleansing Fire. Complete destruction of the Zeltharian species. No survivors, no mercy. No exceptions, Dr. Chen nodded. I'll begin biological weapons research immediately. Admiral Torres stood up. I'll start converting our civilian shipyards to military production. How many ships do you want? All of them, Cole replied. Every ship we can build. Every weapon we can make. I want the Zeltharians to learn that humans are very good teachers. And some lessons only need to be taught once. General Ross gathered her papers. What about the moral implications? History will judge us for this. Cole looked at the screen one more time. History can judge us. The dead children of New Dakota can't. He stood up and headed for the door. Get it done, all of it. The Zeltharians wanted to show us what extinction looks like. Now we show them. As the meeting ended, each person left with their assigned task. Dr. Chen would design weapons that could destroy an entire species. Admiral Torres would build the largest fleet in human history. General Ross would train soldiers for a war of total annihilation. None of them felt good about what they were about to do. But they all remembered the footage from New Dakota. They remembered Jake Morrison's final message. They remembered that sometimes good people have to do terrible things to protect the innocent. The Zeltharians had made humanity a simple offer. Die like insects, or become monsters. Humanity chose to become monsters, and they would be very good at it. Captain Beth Turner floated in the darkness of space, watching the Zeltharian supply convoy through her ship's sensors. The HMS Retribution was humanity's newest stealth destroyer, invisible to alien scanners and silent as death itself. For 3 months, Beth had been hunting Zeltharian ships, learning their patterns, studying their weaknesses. Captain, whispered her tactical officer, Lieutenant Mike Davis. The convoy is maintaining standard formation. 3 cargo ships, 2 escort fighters. They have no idea we're here. Beth nodded, keeping her eyes on the display. The Zeltharians moved with the confidence of a species that had never been prey. They flew in straight lines, used predictable routes, and barely bothered with defensive formations. After all, who would dare attack the mighty Zeltharian hegemony? Today they learn, Beth murmured. The plan was simple but deadly. Attack the convoy, disable 1 ship, board it for intelligence, then destroy everything. Leave no survivors. President Cole's orders were clear on that point. All stations prepare for attack, Beth commanded. Remember, we need at least 1 ship intact enough to board. Everything else dies. The Retribution's weapons powered up silently. Advanced railguns that could punch through alien armor like paper. Missiles designed specifically to exploit Zeltharian ship weaknesses that Dr. Chen had discovered. Every weapon on the ship existed for one purpose: killing the species that had murdered New Dakota. "Fire," Beth ordered. The first railgun shot took out the lead escort fighter before it could even react. The second fighter managed to send a distress signal before Beth's missiles turned it into floating debris. The cargo ships tried to scatter, but the retribution was faster than anything the Zeltharians had ever seen. 2 cargo ships died in the first minute. The third ship, carrying what looked like military supplies, took damage to its engines but remained intact. "Perfect for boarding. Lieutenant Commander Frank Martinez, prepare your team," Beth called over the intercom. "We have a live one." Frank Martinez had been a Marine before the war started. He was a quiet man who rarely smiled, but his team trusted him completely. They had boarded 17 Zeltharian ships in the past month. None had yielded survivors. Frank's boarding team moved through the airlock into the damaged cargo ship. The corridors were filled with smoke and the alien equivalent of emergency lighting. Somewhere in the ship, Zeltharians were probably preparing to fight. "Remember," Frank told his team through their helmet radios, "we don't take prisoners. Get the data cores, study their equipment, then we leave. This ship gets destroyed like all the others." The team moved carefully through the alien corridors. The ship's design was strange, with low ceilings and walls that seemed to pulse like living tissue. Frank remembered Dr. Chen's briefings about Zeltharian biotechnology. Their ships were partially alive, grown rather than built. They found the first group of aliens in what looked like a control room. The Zeltharians raised their weapons, but Frank's team was faster. The aliens died quickly, their gray blood splashing across the living walls. "Sergeant Kelly Brown, download everything from their computers," Frank ordered. "The rest of you search for weapons or technology we can analyze." Kelly worked at the alien computer systems while her teammates gathered samples of Zeltharian equipment. Everything they learned would help Earth scientists build better weapons, find new weaknesses. "Sir," Kelly called out, "I'm finding references to something called the War Academy. Looks like coordinates to a planet where they train their military commanders." Frank nodded. "Download it all. Earth Command will want those coordinates." The boarding lasted 20 minutes. Frank's team collected computer data, weapon samples, and biological specimens. They also found something else: personal recordings from the Zeltharian crew. Videos of the New Dakota attack, showing the aliens celebrating as they murdered human civilians. "Captain Turner," Frank reported over the radio, "we have everything we need. The ship is ready for destruction." "Understood. Return to Retribution immediately." Frank's team evacuated quickly. As their shuttle pulled away, Beth's weapons turned the cargo ship into expanding gas and metal fragments. No evidence remained that humans had been there. To any investigating Zeltharians, it would look like their convoy had been attacked by pirates or rebels. Back aboard the Retribution, Frank delivered his intelligence report to Beth. The War Academy coordinates were immediately transmitted to Earth through encrypted channels. Within hours, the information reached Dr. Amy Richardson's laboratory. Dr. Richardson was Earth's most brilliant and most disturbed scientist. Before the war, she had been working on terraforming technology, finding ways to transform dead planets into living worlds. After New Dakota, she had turned her talents to destruction. "Interesting," Amy said as she studied the Zeltharian data. "Their War Academy is on a planet with a very specific atmospheric composition. High methane, low oxygen. Perfect for testing my new weapon." Her assistant, Dr. Carl Reed, looked up from his own work. "The Genesis torpedo is ready for field testing. But Amy, are you sure about this? Once we use it, there's no going back." Amy turned to look at the wall display showing images from New Dakota. Dead human children, burned cities, families executed while trying to flee. "Carl, they chose to teach us that mercy is weakness. The Genesis torpedo will teach them that some lessons are permanent." The Genesis torpedo was humanity's darkest creation. It didn't just destroy matter, it converted it at the atomic level, turning entire planets into expanding clouds of superheated gas. The weapon violated every treaty humanity had ever signed, but those treaties had been made with civilized species. Meanwhile, Admiral Danny Foster oversaw the construction of humanity's revenge fleet. Massive shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels designed for one purpose: the total destruction of the Zeltharian species. The flagship UES Vengeance was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could crack moons. Carrier ships housed swarms of autonomous attack drones programmed to hunt down any Zeltharian ship or station. Support vessels carried enough firepower to sterilize entire solar systems. "Admiral," reported his chief engineer, Commander Lisa Garcia. "The fleet will be ready for departure in 2 weeks. Every ship is equipped with the new bioweapons designed to target Zeltharian neural networks." Foster nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed Zeltharian space. Red markers indicated every known alien military base, colony world, and patrol route. Soon all of those markers would be gone. "Any word from our reconnaissance teams?" Foster asked. "Captain Turner's mission was successful. We now have detailed intelligence on Zeltharian ship designs, weapon systems, and command structures. More importantly, we have the location of their war academy." Foster smiled coldly. "Perfect. We'll start there. Let their greatest military minds be the first to learn what happens when you underestimate humanity." On the bridge of the Retribution, Beth Turner received new orders. Instead of hunting supply convoys, she was to observe the Zeltharian War Academy planet and report on their defenses. The Academy would be the first target when humanity's revenge fleet arrived. As Beth plotted a course for the Academy, she thought about Jake Morrison's final message from New Dakota. He had asked Earth to remember the dead and make the aliens pay. Soon, humanity would keep that promise. The Zeltharians had wanted to teach humans about extinction. They were about to learn that humans were very fast learners, and when humans learned to kill, they became the best killers in the galaxy. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zelth system, like a swarm of mechanical death. 200 warships, each one designed specifically to kill Zeltharians. Admiral Danny Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the tactical display as his ships took their positions. "Communications," Foster ordered. "Open a channel to all Zeltharian frequencies." The bridge crew worked efficiently, their faces showing no emotion. These were professionals who had trained for this moment for months. Every one of them had lost someone on New Dakota. "Channel open, sir." Foster stepped forward, looking directly into the camera that would broadcast his message across the Zeltharian homeworld. "This is Admiral Danny Foster of the United Earth Fleet. 3 months ago, you murdered 2.25 million human civilians on New Dakota. Your commander said you wanted to teach us what extinction looks like. Today, we return that lesson." Foster nodded to his communications officer, who began broadcasting the execution footage from New Dakota on every Zeltharian frequency. Images of children being shot, families burned alive, medical workers executed while treating wounded civilians. "You called us insects," Foster continued. "You said we were a disease. You laughed while you murdered our children. Now learn what happens when insects become wasps." The transmission ended. Across the Zelth system, Zeltharian military commanders watched in growing horror as the largest human fleet in history moved toward their homeworld. They had expected easy victories like New Dakota. They had not expected humanity to learn, adapt, and return with overwhelming force. Commander Vex, the alien who had given Jake Morrison the ultimatum, stood in his command center on the planet's surface. Around him, subordinate officers waited for orders. The orbital defense platforms were powering up, but Vex could see the numbers on his displays. 200 human ships against 30 Zeltharian vessels and 50 defense platforms. The humans had come prepared for war. "All units, attack pattern apex," Vex commanded. "Show these insects what happens when they challenge a superior species." The Zeltharian fleet launched from their orbital stations, confident in their technological superiority. Their ships were larger than most human vessels, with powerful energy weapons and strong shields. They had conquered dozens of species with these same ships. But as the fleets closed distance, the Zeltharians discovered that humans learned quickly from their defeats. Every weakness the aliens had shown during their attack on New Dakota had been studied, analyzed, and countered. Captain Jenny Williams led the first attack squadron. Her fighter group dove through the Zeltharian formation, targeting the organic neural networks that Dr. Chen had identified as critical vulnerabilities. Bioweapons designed specifically for Zeltharian brain chemistry turned their own ships into death traps. "Target their command nodes," Jenny called over the radio. "Remember, these are the same aliens who shot children trying to surrender." The first Zeltharian ships began dying within minutes. Their organic components couldn't resist the biological agents that humans had created. Ship after ship went dark as their neural networks dissolved, leaving the vessels dead in space. Admiral Foster watched the battle from his command center, noting every tactic, every weakness. "Deploy the second wave. Target their defense platforms." The heavy cruisers moved forward, their railguns firing projectiles at incredible speed. The Zeltharian platforms had been designed to stop conventional weapons, but human railguns punched through their shields like they were paper. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, Major Kate Johnson, "the orbital defenses are down by 60%. The alien fleet is in full retreat." "No retreat," Foster said coldly. "Pursue and destroy. No survivors." This was the lesson humanity had learned from New Dakota. The Zeltharians didn't understand mercy. They only understood strength. If humanity showed weakness now, the aliens would return to finish what they had started. Commander Tony Garcia led the ground assault teams as they landed on the planet's surface. His troops had trained for this mission specifically, studying Zeltharian biology and psychology. They knew exactly how to terrify a species that thought it was superior. The first target was the military academy where Zeltharian commanders trained. Garcia's soldiers moved through the facility with methodical precision, showing the same mercy the aliens had shown on New Dakota. "None. Remember," Garcia told his troops over the radio, "these are the people who train commanders to murder children. They chose to teach us about extinction. Now we teach them." The academy fell within 2 hours. Garcia's teams then moved on to the civilian population centers. The humans offered no protection to non-combatants, no safe passage for the elderly or young. The Zeltharians had established the rules on New Dakota. Humanity was simply following them, but the real horror was yet to come. In orbit above the planet, Dr. Amy Richardson's Genesis torpedoes were being prepared for deployment. Each weapon carried the power to convert matter at the atomic level, turning entire worlds into expanding clouds of superheated gas. "Dr. Richardson," Admiral Foster called over the intercom, "are your weapons ready?" "Yes, Admiral." The first torpedo is targeted at their military academy planet, the second at their primary colony world. The third, Amy paused, looking at the targeting display. The third is aimed at the Zeltharian homeworld itself. Foster nodded. "Fire when ready." The first Genesis torpedo struck the academy planet while Garcia's ground forces were still evacuating. The weapon converted the entire world into energy, creating a brief new star in the Zeltharian system. Billions of aliens died in seconds, including their greatest military minds. On the homeworld, Commander Vex watched his species' most important colony disappear from the sensor displays. For the first time in his life, he felt fear. The humans weren't just winning, they were destroying everything Zeltharian civilization had ever built. "All remaining ships," Vex transmitted desperately, "concentrate fire on the human flagship. If we can kill their leader, perhaps we can negotiate." The surviving Zeltharian vessels converged on the UES Vengeance, pouring their remaining firepower into the massive human ship. But Foster had expected this. The Vengeance's shields held, and her return fire eliminated the last of the alien fleet. "Sir," Major Johnson reported, "all Zeltharian military assets have been destroyed." "The planet is defenseless." Foster looked at the display showing the Zeltharian homeworld. Billions of aliens lived on that planet. Families, children, elderly citizens who had nothing to do with the attack on New Dakota. A year ago, Foster would have hesitated. Today, he remembered videos of human children being executed while trying to surrender. "Fire the remaining Genesis torpedoes," he ordered. The second weapon struck the primary Zeltharian colony world. Like the Academy planet, it simply ceased to exist, converted to energy in a flash of light that could be seen across the system. The third torpedo approached the homeworld while Commander Vex made his final transmission. "Humans of Earth, we surrender. We offer complete capitulation. Spare our world and we will never threaten your species again." Admiral Foster received the transmission on his bridge. Around him, his officers waited for orders. They had come here to teach the Zeltharians about extinction. The lesson was almost complete. "Message received and noted," Foster replied. "But some lessons can only be taught once." The Genesis torpedo struck the Zeltharian homeworld. The planet that had been home to their species for millions of years became an expanding ball of plasma. Commander Vex, his family, his entire civilization, all converted to atoms in the space of heartbeats. Foster watched the tactical display as the homeworld disappeared. "Major Johnson, deploy search teams to scan the system for survivors. Any Zeltharian ships, stations, or settlements are to be destroyed immediately." "Sir, what about escape pods or emergency shelters?" Foster turned to look at the empty space where the Zeltharian homeworld had been. "The Zeltharians taught us that mercy is weakness. They showed us what total war looks like. We're simply being good students. The human fleet spent the next week methodically searching every asteroid, every derelict station, every possible hiding place in the system. They found small groups of Zeltharian survivors and eliminated them all. By the time the fleet departed, nothing remained of the species that had laughed while murdering human children. The lesson was complete. The Zeltharian hegemony no longer existed. 6 months after the Zelth system went silent, President Marcus Cole stood before the United Earth Assembly to address the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in the Great Hall, their faces showing everything from horror to respect to barely concealed fear. The footage from the Zeltharian homeworld's destruction had spread across civilized space, and everyone wanted to know what humanity had become. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Cole began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. I stand before you today to address concerns about humanity's actions in the Zelth system. Some of you have called our response excessive. Some have used the word genocide. You are correct. It was both. A murmur went through the assembly. The Centauri ambassador, a tall blue-skinned being named Kalavorth, raised his hand to speak. President Cole, the Galactic Council recognizes that the Zeltharians committed terrible crimes on New Dakota, but your response has eliminated an entire species. How can we trust that humanity will not do the same to others who oppose you? Cole looked directly at the Centauri representative. Ambassador Kalavorth, when your species had border disputes with the hegemony, did they offer to negotiate? Did they suggest sharing territory or finding compromise?
No, but when they wanted your mining rights in the Outer Rim, did they offer fair compensation or trade agreements?
Kalavorth shifted uncomfortably. They demanded complete surrender of our claims, but that doesn't justify. They conquered your outer colonies and enslaved your people, Cole interrupted. You fought back with everything you had. The only difference is that your everything wasn't enough to stop them completely. Ours was. The assembly fell silent. Cole walked to the center of the speaking platform, where holographic displays showed images from New Dakota. Children playing in schools moments before the attack. Families gathering for dinner on their last night alive. Jake Morrison trying desperately to negotiate with aliens who saw humans as insects. The Zeltharians gave us a choice, Cole continued. Die like insects or fight like the monsters they claimed we were. We chose to fight. And we discovered that when humans become monsters, we become very good at it. Captain Beth Turner sat in the gallery, still wearing her military uniform. Her ship, the HMS Retribution, now patrolled the former Zeltharian territory, ensuring that no survivors emerged from hidden bunkers or forgotten outposts. Her orders remained the same: total extinction. Not one Zeltharian could be allowed to survive. In the months since the homeworld's destruction, Beth's crews had found and eliminated 17 groups of survivors. Scientists on research stations, miners on remote asteroids, diplomatic missions that had been away from home when the Genesis torpedoes fell. All dead now because humanity had learned to be thorough teachers. Dr. Amy Richardson watched the assembly proceedings from her laboratory on Earth. War. Crimes tribunals had tried to prosecute her for creating the Genesis torpedoes, but President Cole had pardoned her. The tribunals had ultimately dismissed all charges when they realized that every judge had lost someone on New Dakota. Amy felt no guilt about her creations. In her office, she kept recordings of Zeltharian children laughing while their parents explained how inferior species deserved extinction. She kept footage of alien soldiers executing human medical workers who had been treating wounded civilians. Sleep came easily when monsters no longer breathed. The galaxy wants to know if humanity can be trusted, Cole said to the assembly. I will answer honestly. We can be trusted to keep our word. We can be trusted to honor our agreements. We can be trusted to protect our friends and allies. But if you choose to teach us about extinction, we will be very attentive students. Admiral Danny Foster had retired to a small farm in rural Kansas, but he kept his commission active and monitored deep space communications daily. He grew wheat and corn in fields that reminded him of New Dakota's agricultural districts. In his greenhouse, he maintained a small memorial garden with soil samples that were the only remaining pieces of the destroyed colony. Foster slept peacefully at night, knowing that the species who had murdered those farmers would never threaten anyone again. He had become a monster to protect the innocent, and he would become one again if necessary. The questioning continued in the assembly. The Andromedian delegate, a crystalline being whose species had also suffered under Zeltharian expansion, spoke next. President Cole, while we understand your desire for revenge, many species are concerned about humanity's willingness to use weapons of total destruction. How can we coexist with a species that possesses such terrible power? Cole nodded thoughtfully. Delegate Shardsinger, your people fought the Zeltharians for 2 centuries. How many of your worlds did they sterilize? How many of your civilians did they execute? The crystalline being's light patterns flickered with remembered pain. 17 worlds. Billions of our people. And when you finally drove them back, what did you do? We negotiated a ceasefire. We agreed to territorial boundaries, which they violated 6 times in the following decades, Cole pointed out, because they learned that your species would always choose negotiation over total victory. They learned that you would always show mercy, even to those who showed none to your children. Cole gestured to the display showing New Dakota. We tried negotiation first. Administrator Jake Morrison offered to share the planet, to find a solution that worked for everyone. The Zeltharians laughed at him and then murdered everyone he was trying to protect. But surely, Shardsinger persisted, there could have been a more proportional response? There was, Cole replied coldly. We could have done to them exactly what they did to us. Murdered their children in schools. Executed their medical workers. Laughed while their cities burned. Instead, we made it quick. The assembly hall erupted in nervous chatter. Some delegates looked horrified at Cole's words. Others, particularly those whose species had suffered under Zeltharian attacks, nodded in understanding. Ambassador Roy Carter, humanity's chief diplomatic representative, stood to address the assembly. He was a calm man who had spent decades building relationships with alien species, but his voice carried an edge of steel that hadn't been there before New Dakota. Honorable delegates, Carter began, I have served in diplomacy for 30 years. I believe in negotiation, compromise, and peaceful solutions. I still believe in these things. But I've learned that they only work with civilized species. Carter activated a holographic display showing the final transmission from New Dakota. Jake Morrison's desperate plea for remembrance. Matt Sullivan's last words about Earth knowing the truth. The Zeltharians announced their intention to exterminate humanity. They called us a disease to be cured. They murdered our children while laughing. They gave us a choice. Extinction or becoming the monsters they claimed we were. Carter looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of delegates from across the galaxy. We chose to become monsters. And we learned that monsters, once awakened, are very difficult to put back to sleep. The final question came from the Vegan Republic's representative, a peaceful herbivorous species that had always advocated for nonviolence. President Cole, what message does humanity wish to send to the galaxy? What should other species expect from human contact? Cole stood in silence for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. We want the same thing we've always wanted. Trade, friendship, cultural exchange, peaceful coexistence. We want to explore the galaxy together, learn from each other, build something better than any of us could achieve alone. He paused, and his expression hardened. But we also want other species to understand that humanity's capacity for peace is matched by our capacity for war. Our willingness to show mercy is balanced by our ability to show none. We have learned to be very good teachers, and some lessons only need to be taught once. The assembly session ended with no formal resolutions or votes. There was nothing to decide. Humanity had already made their statement in the most permanent way possible. The Zeltharian hegemony was gone, converted to expanding clouds of gas and dust that would eventually form new stars. As the delegates filed out, many avoided looking at the human representatives. Others approached with offers of friendship and mutual defense agreements. Everyone understood that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. Captain Turner received her next assignment while returning to patrol duty. Intelligence had identified 3 other aggressive species that had been expanding their territory through conquest and genocide. Her orders were simple: observe, report, and prepare for possible future lessons. The galaxy had learned that humanity could be peaceful neighbors or terrible enemies. The choice of which to encounter would always belong to those who chose to test human resolve. Jake Morrison's final message from New Dakota had asked Earth to remember the dead and make their killers pay. That debt had been paid in full. with interest that would compound across the centuries. Humanity had become the galaxy's best teachers, and class was always in session.